After 7 weeks and 2,000 glorious miles, this Z4 M40i is going back to Tony Lewis and Berry BMW. For those of you that missed it, well, Berry BMW very kindly lent me this car to fill the gap between my M3 rear-wheel drive going back to them and my M3 X-Drive arriving. Well, the X-Drive is now here and that goes back tomorrow. This isn't a regular Z4. It's got a lot of AC Schnitzer kit on it, and in fact, since I collected it, it has even more for the eagle-eyed that might have spotted it already. This was actually initially the late great David King, aka trldeals, demo car, and in fact, a guy called Tom from Instagram made up some awesome plates in memory of David King. There'll be a link in the description as to where you can buy plates for your car with little slogans underneath. In terms of the AC Schnitzer kit it has on it, apart from the obvious styling kit like the boot spoiler and the massive splitter around the front, well, it has the performance upgrade, which gives the mighty B58 400 horsepower and 600 newton meters of torque, so that's 100 newton meters more than the base B58 that this car comes with. It has the coilover suspension kit, which is adjustable as well, which is fantastic. Again, if you'd watched my first video, you'll know how much I was raving on about that. And it has a axle back exhaust system. So basically from the rear axle back, essentially, you've got the rear exhaust box. So instead of the twin pipes that you get on the Z4 M40i, this has now got quad pipes and it makes a better sound. Since then, AC Schnitzer UK asked me if I'd like to borrow some of their 20-inch forged wheels to finish or complete the Z4 package. And I think you'll agree, they look absolutely stunning. Big shout out to Motec and the team down there for taking the Z4 in and fitting these wheels. In fact, they ceramic coated them as well, and they filmed their own video. So head over to Motec and check out their channel and the video of this car. It goes into a lot more detail and you see a lot more sexy shots of those wheels. And it doesn't stop there either. The original 19-inch wheels came with Michelin's Pilot Supersport tyres, but these 20-inch wheels have got Michelin's Pilot Sport 4S tyres, so an even better rubber, more up-to-date version of their high-performance road tyre. So not only do they look good, they also add a bit more grip and a bit more performance to something that already is pretty quick. Right, I think I've done enough talking. Let's jump inside and take it out on the road for one last time. What a car. I'm really gonna miss this when it goes tomorrow. I've had such a great time with it, and although it's been January, February, early March and pretty average weather on the whole, it seems every time I pick up the keys for this car, well, the sun tends to shine, or at the very least it's a daylight today where I can have the roof off. So literally 1900 out of those 2,000 miles has been topless. Not me topless, thankfully, for everyone, for the general public. That would be horrifying, but the car topless. And as a result, I've really enjoyed every mile, and it's made me appreciate a convertible more than any other convertible I've ever driven or had the keys to. And I know the likes of my good friend Petrol Ped, well, he's a big convertible fanboy, if you like, and now I really understand why. I have been looking at these on Auto Trader. For people that own them, it's good news because they haven't depreciated much. 2.5, 3-year-old ones are still 40 odd grand. And in fact, my good friend Nick Fox, if you don't follow him on Instagram, I'll put it on the screen here. Fantastic videographer, photographer, runs his own production company. He picked up his white Z4 M40i almost exactly the same time that I picked this one up, and we've been sharing a lot of stories between us, and yeah, I'm quite envious of his car. When he said he was getting it initially, I was like, okay, going from an M140 to that, you know, you might find it a bit dull, but not at all. You know, it's a really good and interesting piece of kit. In terms of those upgrades we talked about on the outside, if you add them all up cost-wise, you're looking at about £20,000. A big chunk of that are the wheels that come with the Michelin PS4S tyres. They're £8,500, the wheels alone. So I don't think there's going to be many people out there that are going to spend 20 grand on their Z4 and get everything. If it was my money, I think the most notable, let's call it, upgrade from AC Schnitzer is the coilover suspension. I think I said that in my first drive video on this car. If you missed that video, it's definitely worth watching, because I do talk about other stuff to do with the Z4 and this particular car. There'll be a link to that video up here somewhere and in the description below. I did mention in that video that whatever they've done to their coilover system, I mean, it's just a magic carpet, this car. And although it looks like it rides really low, and it does, that front splitter has scraped on a few bits and pieces along the way, but thankfully it's not marked up too badly. Although it does ride low, it rides so well. It's just such a nice fluid motion. In fact, the last car I drove along this very patch of road was a Porsche Taycan Turbo S, and that has Porsche's amazing air suspension, and that floats along here incredibly. I wouldn't say this car feels much different to that, and I know that the stock Z4 M40i doesn't feel anywhere near as good and pliant as this particular car. Well, that trailer and that car almost almost took me out then. Oh, could you imagine? 24 hours before giving this back, it gets smashed up by someone else. But yeah, suspension would be where my money would go first. That's what my priority would be if I could choose any of those upgrades from AC Schnitzer, because I think it really transforms the way this car feels, the way it rides, and we're coming into some twisties now, the way it handles. You turn it in, you expect it to roll quite a lot because it feels quite soft, but not at all. It's completely planted, stays lovely and flat. Really is a proper bit of kit, this car. It's just so nice. You can hear that exhaust note. Well, I can anyway, I hope you can. Really, really cool. It has the performance upgrade, which does make a big difference. I haven't timed this car's acceleration, believe it or not, but I reckon that it would do 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds. It's got to be about half a second quicker than a regular M40i, just because of that 100 Newton meters increase in torque. That makes a huge difference, especially mid-range. Again, in my first drive video, I do this incredible pull from 5th gear, which we're in at the moment. It just pulls like a train. In fact, let's just do it again. We're on a 60 road here, there's nothing behind. So we're now in 5th gear at 20 miles an hour, and foot on the floor. Here we go. That's 30, 40, now the boost is coming, 50, 60. In 5th gear. And this has got a ZF 8-speed gearbox, so we've got plenty of gears to choose from. Let's just have a quick sound check through here. Sounds great. And remember, all of the OPFs and cats are intact. Nothing's been changed. It's just the back box. So I think they've done a really good job. You can hear just enough of that glorious straight 6. It's such a sonorous engine, more so than the S58. This is the B58 here, more so than the S58 that's in my M3. I just think it's lovely. I love every time you come off the throttle and you pick it up again, you can just hear the exhaust valves open. It just sounds great. It's just lovely. It's such a precise engine, it really is. There's just something about having nothing up here. You can hear the birds sing. My other half, Lou, although she's an Audi girl at heart, I'm sure she won't mind me saying that she's really enjoyed the time that I've had this car. We've been on some amazing trips. We went away for a long weekend a couple of weeks ago. It was 3 days and we did loads of driving, and the roof was down the whole time, even on the motorway sections, and we just loved it. Every evening or afternoon at dinner we would talk about how lovely it's been just driving along down a road like this, listening to the birds sing. You just feel like you're part of nature. And I know that's a bit soppy to say that, but you really do. But the good thing is, you know, you pull a paddle and then you put your foot back down again, and it's a proper bit of kit. It's a proper sports car, this thing. It really is. I think if I came into a bit of excess money, I would just have to buy myself one of these, you know, over many other convertibles. Sure, the Boxster GTS 4 litre would be more of the driver's tool, but cars like BMW's very own M4 competition X-Drive convertible, well, I was really unimpressed with that car. Although in a straight line it would be quicker than this, and ultimately it's a faster car, more practical because it's got 4 seats and a bigger boot, it suffers really badly from scuttle shake, and this car does not suffer from scuttle shake. Maybe a fraction if you get out of something like my M3 straight into this. Yeah, it might feel slightly disconnected in comparison, but I'm talking about, you know, minuscule really. Otherwise it's just really solid and feels really well put together, really well developed. But there is one problem that I've discovered, especially in dry weather. As most of you know, this Z4 was developed alongside the current Toyota Supra. Now, my good friends out at Apex Nürburgring, who I visit regularly during the summer months, purchased a Supra when that first came out, whenever it was, 2019. And they had some issues with that car. They discovered very quickly that it was good up to a certain point, but when you started pushing it hard and when it was under big loads, so around the Nürburgring itself, they were getting something called bump steer. Now, I didn't fully understand what bump steer meant. When I had these new wheels put on this car and the weather became much nicer and I was finding more grip, when I'd put my foot down in, let's say, a lower gear, so something like third now at 40 miles an hour, I could feel the car moving around in not the nicest way, almost like it was scrabbling for grip. So like an open diff car moves around a bit when you put your foot down if it's got enough power. But this has got a diff, and it wasn't that feeling because, well, it would have enough grip in first and second, so it's not going to be, you know, struggling in third. It wasn't that, it was something else, and I just couldn't figure it out. So anytime I went out for, let's say, a spirited drive, I felt a little bit nervous because it just didn't feel like it was tracking in a straight line under acceleration. In fact, it reminded me very much of my M2 a couple of years ago, when I'd obviously hit a pothole or something and the tracking was out, and when I took it to Snetterton for a track day, every time I accelerated, the car seemed to pull to the left, and when I came off the accelerator, it would pull to the right, and that was all down to tracking. Tracking on this car is perfect because 90% of the time it feels amazing, but it's actually that bump steer issue that I'm feeling. Now, you need to look up bump steer to understand it, and Robert Mitchell, who runs and owns Apex, very kindly left me a long voice note the other night explaining it to me. It's just down to the actual toe of the rear wheel. So depending on how much load they're under, I'm such a child, depending on how much load they're under, so obviously this car's got more power and more torque, so it's under quite a bit more load than a standard Z4 M40i. When you sit into the travel, in hard acceleration, the bump steer effect basically plays around with the toe in and the toe out of the rear wheels. So that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling one of the wheels, or both of them maybe, trying to move me left and right. And as it goes through the travel, it gets better. It starts off bad, it gets better, and then it gets bad again. So it's a real uneven feeling. And Robert was saying that with their Supra, when they took it for a lap of the Nürburgrings through some of the really high speed, fully loaded up corners, you can imagine at 120 miles an hour. So it was a real unnerving feeling. I mean, for me it was at 50, 60 miles an hour. For those guys at double that, if not more, on a narrower bit of the Nürburgring, oh, I dread to think what that would feel like. So I have discovered that this car does have that small fault, that small issue. But that's only when you're pushing it really hard. And I think for 90% of Z4 owners, well, they're going to push it hard occasionally, but they're probably not going to push it to the car's limits where you start feeling that bump steer issue. For the last bit of this video, I think we should just enjoy this incredible bit of road. I want to say a massive shout out and thanks to Tony Lewis and Berry BMW for lending me this demo for the past 7 weeks. It's just been incredible, and it really has spawned my love for a convertible car. Also, big shout out to trldeals, David King. It should be him in this car now. It should be him enjoying this glorious bit of kit. But unfortunately, we lost him at the end of last year. So yeah, sending love to you, mate. If you are watching me from above, you've got a good view. You'll be able to keep an eye on exactly what I'm doing in this car because the roof's been off the whole time. So yeah, it's been bittersweet having this car. It really has, because every time I've been behind the wheel of it, I have been thinking about David a lot, and Carly as well, because she should have been sitting there. So yeah, real tough one to swallow, but you know, I've just had such a fantastic time in this car, and hopefully been bringing those two along with me for all of the journeys and adventures. Big shout out to Motec once again for getting this car in at such short notice and fitting these 20-inch wheels that were supplied by AC Schnitzer UK. Yeah, really cool. They certainly look the part. I mean, what beautiful pieces of art. That's what they are, really. They're pieces of art. And they're not far off the cost of a piece of art. But yeah, I suppose if you've got the money, then why not? Why not? But yeah, so big thanks to both of those guys. And a big thanks to Tom for supplying these plates that have got a real nice little slogan on the bottom of them. Again, sort of talking about David King. So yeah, if you want plates like those, there'll be a link to that below in the description. None of this is a paid advertisement. It's all completely organic, and I mean, yeah, as if I wouldn't be thanking everyone. What a fantastic couple of months. Really has been a complete surprise package, this car. Real surprise package. I wasn't expecting to have as much fun in a convertible Z4 as I have now, and whenever I see one on the road, and I've seen a couple since I had this car, only a couple, but I have seen a couple, whenever I see them, I'm quite envious of people that own this car. It's that good, it really is. It's one of those cars that from now on, when I see one on the road, I'm going to acknowledge and appreciate. And it's funny that at the launch that I went to 3 years ago in beautiful Malaga, I just didn't appreciate, I didn't spend enough time in the car, and I didn't appreciate what the car was all about back then. So yeah, well done. BMW built another brilliant car. What a surprise.